class. I'm back for social studies, and oh wait, before I start, I'm gonna show you something really quick. Look at that. Those were my pets. Okay, I got goldfish and a looch. Okay, so those are my pets. Anyway, so yesterday we talked about what did we talk about yesterday? We talked about Symposium. We learned that Athens in ancient Greece class, they call their party, okay, they call their dinner party a symposium, okay, and we learned, we learned that during a symposium, in a dinner party, women were not allowed to go there, okay, only men. But if a woman is an entertainer, okay, if that woman entertains, then that woman can be in the party, okay. And we were able to, learn that, at their dinner party they would talk, they would drink, and then they would watch performances, okay. And they like most especially the recital of poems, okay, by Homer, the Iliad, which talk about Achilles, the hero of the Trojan War. So that's what we learned yesterday. And also we learned about their pottery, right? The jug that the Athenians really make beautiful jugs like this. Okay. I want to see your jugs. I asked you to make a jug, right? Design a jug. So I want to see it. Okay. And so today we are going to talk about um, the three great thinkers in ancient Greece class. Three great thinkers. So it will be a few more lessons, and we're gonna be having a test. Okay. So all right. Before I start reading, I'm gonna show you some vocabulary words. Okay. Justice. Okay. Justice is it's a it's a condition of like being morally correct or fair. Okay. And then Socrates, one of the great thinkers, he was a teacher teaching young men in Athens. Okay. And conversation is like it's an exchange of opinion or ideas. So like now, if you're watching me, so we're kind of having, no, it's not a conversation because it's only one way. So conversation is two-way. I got someone talking to me too. Like we are exchanging opinions and ideas. So that's a conversation class. And then I got Plato. I'm sure you heard him, right? The same with Socrates. Probably in first grade you talk about this, Plato. So Plato was the student of Socrates. Okay. Ideal. So ideal is kind of like an opinion of perfection. Okay. Ideal. Something that people wants to achieve, or something that people wants to kind of like follow. Ideal. All right. Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the great thinkers, and he was the student of Plato. Okay. And I got here Macedonia. Okay. Macedonia, this is where Aristotle came from. This is a outside of Athens. It's a place where it's the northern part of Greece. This one, Macedonia. And then last one is this one, Lyceum. Okay, Lyceum is the school. It's the name of the school which Aristotle opened. Okay, Lyceum. All right, so I want you to listen. Okay, so ancient Greeks love learning. Um, so they love to learn. So the ancient Greeks, especially Athenians, all right? So part of learning is finding new ways to look at and think about. Okay, so some Greeks spent their lives doing this. So that's just like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They're just three, I like, some of them. Now, so those are the three great thinkers, and this story will be about them, okay? Now, a group of young men, okay, gathered around Socrates, who had served Athens as a soldier. So he was a stone worker, but he was also a philosopher, which was the Greek word for a person who loves to think. So Socrates wasn't just a philosopher, he wasn't just a great thinker, but he was once a soldier of Athens. And he was also a person, he was also a stone worker. Okay? So, unlike other teachers, Socrates did not just tell his student things. Instead, he asked questions. He wanted students to figure out answers for themselves. For instance, if one of his students was talking about justice, Socrates would ask him exactly what he meant by justice. So the student would try to explain but would get all mixed up. Then Socrates would ask more questions. After lots of questions and answers, Socrates helped the man to understand justice better. So Socrates was one of the great thinker, and he teaches young men. Okay, now his way of teaching is very different. Okay, because he was the kind of teacher that asks questions. He doesn't just talk about something, but he would ask questions, and the students would like answer him, and then he would ask more questions. So that's how his students learn from him, by asking questions, and that helped. And Socrates is helping them was helping them to understand certain things by asking questions. Okay, so his idea, Socrates' idea, that it was very important to think. So for Socrates, it's very important that his students think. Okay, when he asks questions, it's not just him giving them what they need to learn, but it is them asking questions and giving their opinion about something. Okay, and he would listen and he would ask questions. All right, so this is how learning from Socrates happens. All right, so for example, they might have thought about how to remember how to spell a word, or how to win a game. So, this kind of things. So, Socrates would ask questions. Now, one student who listened to Socrates was um, named Plato. Okay, so that's Plato. So, Plato loved thinking about questions Socrates asked. After Socrates died, Plato wrote some things his teacher had said. After a while, he had written down most of what he could remember Socrates saying. At that point, lots of people would have stopped writing, but Plato didn't stop. Instead, he tried to imagine what Socrates would have said about something, and he wrote, okay, he wrote that down too. Now, Plato wrote about 30 of these conversations, which people today will read. All right, so Plato was one of the students of Socrates, but he was a kind of student that doesn't just listen or ask questions. But what he did was like he would write down whatever Socrates would say about something when he asked a question, and then Socrates would, answer the question, and then he would write it down. Okay, everything that Socrates would talk about, he would write it down. He will not just listen it, but he would write it down. Okay, so that's the kind of student he was, and he was able to write 30 conversations between him and Socrates. But also, he was the kind of student also who would think of what will Socrates will say about something. So he was very inventive. Okay, and okay, so the now with things about Plato, so the difference between Plato as a great thinker, as a teacher, no, as yeah, the difference between them is that both of them, I know, Socrates teaches by asking questions. Well, Plato would write down, okay, would write down any conversation they have. All right, now, all right, so Plato started a school called the Academy and had many students. So one of the best was Aristotle, but Aristotle was not an Athenian. Okay, he had been born in Macedonia, a region on the northern edge of Greece. When Aristotle was about 17, he went to Athens to study at Plato's academy. Aristotle spent almost 20 years at the academy. Aristotle and Plato often thought about subjects in different ways. When Plato wanted to figure out how to make the best government, he he started by trying to learn what people are like. Okay? Then he wrote a long conversation about an ideal government. But Aristotle studied more than 100 actual governments and tried to decide which one which ones were best. So Plato tried to imagine the best world. Aristotle studied the world as it really is. So Aristotle opened his own school called the Lyceum. In Athens, after his death, his students wrote down what Aristotle had said about many subjects. So before Aristotle started the Lyceum, he was the teacher of Alexander, the prince of Macedonia. You know Alexander? Alexander the Great. So he was the student of Aristotle. Now, later, when Alexander became king of Macedonia, he conquered many countries and people called him Alexander the Great. Okay? So, what was this? So, Socrates was the teacher of Plato and he teaches by asking questions. And then Plato was the kind of students who would write down whatever Socrates would say. So if Socrates was just like teaching by talking, discussing things, Aristotle was writing it down. So that's why he was able to write lots of conversation. And then he opened up a school which was called Academy, and Aristotle was one of the students there, and he came from Macedonia. Macedonia is the northern part of Greece, and then Aristotle was the kind of he was the kind of student who will not just listen what was told to him, but he would study it. For example, he wants to have an ideal government, like perfect government, or the right government, the best government. But so he would study actual country, okay, how they govern their country. He would study them in real life. So that's how he learned about things. Okay, and one of his students was Alexander the Great. So those are the three great thinkers in ancient Greece, class. And um, why do you think Aristotle was sent to Athens to study instead of Sparta, class? Why not Sparta? Why Athens? He wasn't from Athens, okay? He came from a different city state. But why is it that Athens was the place he studied instead of Sparta? Why do you think? Huh? Because Athens at that time was at their golden age period, and they really have accomplished a lot of things in terms of learning. Okay, instead, like especially schools, they have really good schools too. So I think that's the reason why. And so I'd like you to answer the review questions. And who do you think you would want to be your teacher? Would you like Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle to be your teacher? Alexander the Great teacher was Aristotle. So who would you want to be teacher? Which school do you want to go to? Okay. So um answer the question, okay? I will add that to the review questions because I want to know which teacher you want to be. Who do you want to be your teacher if you are in Athens? Okay, class? Bye bye. See you again next time.